If you want to make a living from your art in 2025, there's one superpower that you absolutely need to develop. And no, it's probably not what you think. It's the one reason why I've been able to generate several $1 million in earnings from my art over the last 20 years. Selling my originals in prints through art festivals, galleries, and online, building an online art academy with thousands of students, and now launching my new book, You Can Sell Your Art. So, what's my superpower? It's not drawing, it's not talent, and it's not some woo woo thing of manifesting success through just imagining it. Look, when I was a kid, I couldn't draw better than the rest of the kids in my classes. When I left the police force to pursue art full time, I didn't know anything about composition, and yet now I teach it. In college, in my graphic design program, I flunked the photography course, but now I teach editing digital photos for artists, and I run a successful publishing business where we shoot and color correct all of the images in house. I was the last person I knew to actually get a smartphone. And yet now I have over 120,000 followers in social media. And in 2020, after a couple near death experiences, I decided I didn't want to just crank out more paintings and make lots of money. I wanted to shift my focus into sharing everything that I've learned with other aspiring artists. I wanted to be able to change lives. So, knowing nothing about the online learning business, I launched my art academy. And this year, we're going to exceed $600,000 in sales of my online courses. And last year, I knew nothing about writing or self publishing a book. And just last week, we uploaded my new book to Amazon Kindle, and we're going to be launching it in November. So, what's the secret behind all that? What's my superpower? I became a lifelong learner. That's it. I made the decision to never stop learning, and it has been a life changer. But here's the thing, simply learning new skills and concepts isn't enough. Lots of artists take class after class, workshop after workshop, but never really move forward. And the secret is knowing how to learn strategically, focusing on the right things at the right time, and then putting them into practice. And if you're serious about making a living from your art, I've put together something special for you that you're going to really love. You can click on the link in the description right now and get 5 free sample chapters of my upcoming book. And if you stick around to the end of this video, I'll show you how you can get one of my premium paid courses that regularly sells for $199 absolutely free. Creating Your Plan for Success is a course I've developed that will help you create a detailed step-by-step plan to turn learning into real growth and long-term success. So, are you ready to start building your superpower? You first need to understand that one of the most important keys to harnessing the superpower is something I call strategic learning. Because here's the problem, a lot of people spend their life learning, but never put it into practice. You see them all the time on Jeopardy. Brilliant, well read people, but who are working in low level jobs that have nothing to do with the knowledge they've accumulated. And that's because just stacking knowledge and skills doesn't guarantee results. So, what's the secret? Well, you need to learn strategically. That means focusing right now on the skill, concept, or knowledge that's going to have the biggest impact on you going forward. Now, I call these dominoes because when you knock one over, it triggers a chain reaction that moves everything else ahead. Now, as an artist, your first dominoes are almost always creative. Things like learning to draw, brushwork, composition, light and shadow, and color theory. Now, as you improve, the dominoes focus to bigger questions. Things like spending time in process mode, developing style, and ultimately finding your own unique voice as an artist. And then, once your work starts attracting attention, the dominoes become more business focused. Things like how to price your work, how to talk about your work, where to sell your work. Later, it might be things like licensing your work or self-publishing your work or selling your work online. Maybe even eventually opening your own gallery. But the key here is progression. You need to focus on the right domino for where you are right now. But here's the catch. Learning isn't just watching a video or reading a book. You only get to knock over that domino when you master the thing, and that takes action. Let's take perspective as an example. You can read about it until you've memorized every rule, but that alone won't make you better. To fully learn it or master it, you need to go through these three stages: practice mode, process mode, and then finally product mode. Let's look at practice mode. That's usually drills and exercises to learn a specific skill or technique. And when you're in practice mode, there is no thought of creating a finished work of art. So for perspective, you'd start small. You'd do little drills. You'd practice drawing cubes and cylinders and pyramids in 1 and 2 point perspective. Then move on to slightly more complex objects, things like a house with a peaked roof, with windows and doors. From there, you could expand into a street scene with multiple houses, fences, sidewalks, roads, etc. Then practice to create a checkerboard floor in perfect perspective. But each drill builds artistic muscle memory, just like scales for a musician. The goal isn't to make a finished painting, it's to focus on perspective and repeat the drills until the principles of perspective become second nature. Now, here's a real world example of how important that is. One of my buddies taught in one of the top animation programs in Toronto. And as part of their final exam, the students had to create a 3-dimensional spiral staircase in perfect perspective. Not because anybody planned on animating 3D staircases for a living, but because the ability to do it had showed that you'd mastered the fundamentals. And that was essential moving forward into 3D animation. And once you feel comfortable with the drills, it's time to attempt a finished piece where perspective plays a starring role. This could be a cityscape or even an imaginative landscape that forces you to use perspective intentionally. Now, the point here isn't perfection, it's application. When you're working in process mode, you're trying something you've never done before that you don't know how to do. So there's a very high likelihood that the finished piece won't be a success. So the key here is to give the painting permission to fail before you start, because failure is where learning happens, and failure is a necessary part of the process. So some of these pieces are going to look awkward. Some of them might flop completely, but eventually you'll be able to get to the point where you can create a finished painting that relies heavily on perspective that is a success. And that's exactly what process mode is for: testing, stretching, and learning through trial and error. And then we move into product mode. At some point, after enough of the drills and enough of the failed experiments, something shifts. Perspective no longer feels intimidating, and you can incorporate it into your paintings seamlessly and know that you're going to have success most of the time. Now, perspective is a natural part of your toolkit. It's no longer an obstacle that you need to overcome. You can reasonably expect to nail perspective in all of your pieces going forward and end up with a sellable piece. And when you're working in product mode, that's the idea. We stick with the concepts, skills, techniques, knowledge that we are competent and confident in, knowing that there's a very good chance we're going to have a successful painting every time. But here's the problem with product mode. If you only stay there, you never grow. So what we need to do is identify what's the next domino and then knock that one over. You never stop because there's always another domino waiting. That might be composition, might be drawing, light and shadow, color theory, mastering drawing the figure or faces or animals. It just never ends. That's what fully learning looks like. And the key is every time you knock over one domino, there's always another one waiting. And once your art reaches a level where people are starting to notice it, they're stopping and looking at it, maybe even inquiring about whether it's for sale or not, the next set of dominoes aren't about brush handling or perspective anymore. Now the dominoes are about business. And just like with learning to paint, there's a natural progression here. At first, the big domino is simply determining what's the proper pricing for your work. Price it too high, you'll have no sales. Price it just right for where your art is now, and the work could literally fly off the walls of your booth. But you need to understand the psychology of pricing and why people buy one artist's work over another. You'll need to learn how to create consistent pricing among different sizes and formats, and how to gradually raise prices as demand grows. Next comes how to communicate about your art. Collectors don't just buy paintings, they buy stories. You need to learn to talk about your art without sounding like a pompous twit in a way that connects emotionally without feeling pushy or over salesy or rehearsed. Then comes figuring out where to sell. That might be festivals and art fairs at first. Then moving on to galleries, selling online, and maybe even opening your own art gallery like I did. Each venue requires a different approach, a different skill set, and different knowledge. And learning which one suits your work, your price point, and your ultimate goals can change everything. Now, in today's world, learning to present your work online is another huge domino that you'll eventually need to kick over. That includes building a website, using email to keep in contact with your clients, and learning how to leverage platforms like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube to continually grow your audience. And then finally, when you've achieved success with all of those things, then you might want to look at creating multiple streams of income. When I finally developed my current voice and had my breakout show at the Toronto Art Expo, where I did 28,000 in sales in a weekend, you might think that the learning was over, but it was really just beginning. Now I was dealing with multiple galleries in Canada and the US. Then I went on to licensing and eventually self-publishing prints of my work. And I made the decision to do everything in-house. That meant I had to learn the entire process from camera to print. Then I had to master e-commerce so that we could sell directly from my website. And the problem of how to package and ship my work internationally, that was another domino that we needed to knock over. Then digging deep on social media to drive people to my website, finally opening my own commercial gallery, and then creating my online art academy. That allowed me to have multiple streams of income. And I have to tell you that during COVID, that became a lifesaver. We had to shut down my gallery and we lost a valuable stream of income. In addition to that, the physical galleries that I was showing in also had to shut down. But in spite of that, during COVID, we actually had a couple banner years. And that's because those people who were still working were stuck in their homes and they didn't have much to spend their money on. They couldn't go on vacations. They couldn't go out to dinner. They didn't have to buy clothes because they were working at home. That meant they had all this disposable income. And a lot of people spent it on nesting, on making their homes more beautiful. And that meant buying a lot of artwork online. And people had a lot of spare time. And many of them spent that learning and taking courses online. Now, thankfully, we had those two revenue streams already in place. So we were able to weather the storm. We got through the crisis without any appreciable impact on my annual earnings. And now I'm just about ready to launch my new book. Now, for some of you, all this learning might sound exhausting. I get it. But here's the thing. Because I've developed a love of learning, this entire process has been incredibly fulfilling as well as very successful from a business point of view. For the past 20 years, every time I've seen an opportunity, I thought, well, let me look into that. And then if it made sense, I decided, well, I can learn how to do that. And then I did it. And when I left the police force, my goal was pretty simple. It was to be able to make as much money in a year as I would have made had I stayed on the police force long enough to collect a pension. Well, I've far surpassed that number many years ago, but I've been able to create evergreen streams of revenue with my prints, my online courses, and now with my book that are going to be able to continue to earn money for my family long after I'm gone. Now, I actually could have stopped after the Toronto Art Expo and just focused all of my time going into the studio, creating my paintings, and shipping the work off to galleries. And if that's all you want to do, that's fine. I actually have a number of artist friends who have created very successful art businesses doing just that. But I guess for me, I'm just too curious. So every time I see a new opportunity that might be useful in expanding my business, I investigate it thoroughly. And if it makes sense, I dig deep, master it, and then put it into practice. Now, this has been incredibly helpful for me as a teacher Because I've been successful in pretty much every aspect of the art business, and I'm able to pass those hard-won lessons on to my students. And just like with art, the key to any business success has been sequence, the order in which you knock the dominoes over. It doesn't make sense to worry about self-publishing unless you're consistently creating paintings that people engage with and actually want to buy. And by the same token, there's no point in mastering the online learning business before you've actually proven that you're an effective teacher. Knock over the domino that's in front of you right now, and that sets up the next one. And these dominoes just keep evolving as your career grows. And even now for me, the learning never stops. Last year, I took courses on sprint testing. That's a very high level marketing concept that measures the real world effectiveness of hooks and headlines. And we actually use this to help fine tune the title for my book. I took another course on how to create viral video effects for shorts. And my current domino, well, it's self publishing using Amazon KDP. I've spent the past several months just immersed in how to create a successful launch for a book. Why? Because I'm about to launch my book. And that means crafting a marketing plan, setting up distribution, and building a launch strategy. And yes, this video is part of that launch strategy. In the past few months, we've collected over 2,000 emails of people who have downloaded the 5 free chapters of my book, so that we can reach out to them directly when the book launches. And we've developed a solid strategy to ramp up the promotion over the next few months to give us the best chance possible for a successful book launch with a lot of sales and getting us a high ranking on the Amazon site. But here's the important part. Unless you're about to launch a book, it would be a complete waste of time for you to learn everything I've learned in the last few months. In fact, even if you plan on one day publishing your own book, learning about it now would still be a waste of time because things are changing so quickly now. So the strategies that work in 2025, there's no way they're going to still be effective in 2035. That's why strategic learning means knocking over the domino that's in front of you right now, not the one 10 years down the line. And that's really the key. Strategic learning is focusing on today's dominoes, not tomorrow's. So for you, that means identifying what is the one thing that would have the most impact on everything you do now and going forward. Master that, put it into action, and then let it open the door to the next challenge. And the truth is, this process really never ends. There's always another domino waiting, another skill, another concept, another piece of the puzzle that can take you further. And that's why being a lifelong learner is the ultimate superpower. Yes, it takes effort. Yes, it takes discipline. But if you've got a passion for art, this isn't just work, this is fuel. And there's one final point that's very important. Just because you love pushing paint around, that doesn't mean you have a passion for art. For it to be a true passion, you need to not only love doing the thing, but you need to have an overwhelming obsession with mastering everything about that thing, whatever it is. And you need to be willing to do whatever it takes to actually achieve that. Doesn't matter if it's art, writing, film, music, whatever. And if your dream is to make a living from your art, once you've mastered the art side of things, then you need to bring that same passion to the business side of being an artist. When you combine passion with strategic learning and a strong work ethic, success stops being a matter of if and becomes only a matter of when. So if you're ready to start knocking over your dominoes, I want to give you 2 free resources that are going to help you immensely. First, you can click on the link in the description to get 5 free chapters from my new book, You Can Sell Your Art, that gives you a step-by-step guide to creating a livable income from your art. In this book, I walk you through the proven path from hobbyist to professional, everything I wish I had known when I was starting out. And secondly, if you pick up a copy of the book during our launch week and leave an honest review on Amazon, I'm going to give you free access to my course, Creating Your Plan for Success. This is the exact framework I use with students of my Hungry Artist community to map out their goals and objectives and turn them into reality. It will help you create a detailed plan designed specifically for where you are right now as an artist, to knock over the right dominoes in the right order to achieve your maximum potential as an artist. Now, this course sells normally for $199, but you can get it free as my thank you for helping to support my book. Now, we're planning to launch the book in November, and if you sign up for my 5 free chapters now, you'll be notified when the book launches at a special discount so that you can get it during the launch week. To be eligible to get my course, Creating Your Plan for Success, absolutely free, simply by leaving a review on Amazon within the first 30 days. So click on the link in the description. Get your 5 free chapters now. I guarantee you those chapters alone are going to give you some valuable information that's going to help you on your journey if it's your desire to become a successful artist. And remember, success is all about learning strategically and taking action. And these resources are going to help you do exactly that. If you find my content helpful and you want to support the channel, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe. And if you want to make sure you never miss one of my videos, click on the little bell icon. That'll make sure you get notified every time I come out with a new video. And I'd love to hear your comments, what you think about the 5 free chapters that you've received. So thanks for your time. I'm Tim Packer. I'll see you in the next video.